that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. So lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell.
Hello.
The marvelously famous Tom Fennell. And we always laugh, even at an old joke. So every day I get up early and I look at the news and see what I can find about energy and climate change, and I record it, the individual items that I find interesting. I build a synopsis for each with a link, and I put it at my website, geoharvey.wordpress.com. And Tom and I do the 20 or so that we find are the most interesting every Thursday morning.
The best of the blog.
The best of the blog. Here.
By the way, I'll mention it, 'cause I've mentioned it before.
Yeah.
All of these things we're talking about are available on your blog.
Yes, that's right.
With the link.
With the
you
link.
Click on the link, and some of them are very detailed. We don't have time to talk about them.
Oh, yeah.
In depth. I mean,
Although there's one that you had trouble with this week that I still haven't got right. We'll mention that when we get to it.
This is the second item on the list today.
Yeah, it is, and I don't think that it's all that important. We will talk about it, but it comes up twice, and the second instance is the more interesting of the two, I think.
We're going to be talking about it twice.
Yeah.
I thought I was having deja vu all over.
Yes, right. Well, Gene, yeah. Anyway, so we will. I guess we'll just start. How does that sound?
Let's get moving.
You got a title for this first one, Tom?
NASA is studying greenhouse gas emissions.
How do you like that? This is from Clean Technica.
So got a picture coming up.
Picture coming up, but it's not coming up. Okay, let's fool around a little bit. This computer is misbehaving. There we go.
There we go.
This is a picture of greenhouse gases. I don't know how they do this, and I don't know how they separate or add these things, but clearly that big comma on the left there at the top, near the top, that's dark, is greenhouse gases coming from the eastern part of the United States.
Well, clearly it's temperature related in this, and it's the summertime.
You think so?
The red indicating a warmer temperature, the blue indicating a colder temperature.
That may be. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
I looked at this thing and I said, isn't that beautiful modern art?
Yeah, right. Well, the story is methane emissions from oil and gas industry are significantly higher than previous official estimates, according to draft revisions of the U.S. greenhouse gas emissions inventory from the EPA. Revised estimates of the 2013 emissions are 27% higher than the previous tally, which is not good news. But that map showed us the greenhouse gases gathering. I guess they were gathering heat.
I would say that what we're looking at there is heat associated with the atmosphere. It's atmospheric heat, which would be greenhouse gases.
Yep. So
quick takeaway here, over a 20-year time frame, those emissions have the same climate impact as over 200 coal-fired power plants. They're talking about the emissions
from methane.
From methane.
Yes.
Yep. Sneaking out of the ground.
Sneaking out of the ground.
And this is important right now. This next set, that lost gas is worth $1.4 billion at 2015 prices.
There you go.
And it's the oil companies that are losing that.
Yes, it is.
That's real money they're losing.
But capturing that gas would be expensive, and so they go after it, but not always.
Not always, yeah. Somebody sits down there and makes a chart, which is cheaper to do. It's sort of like the old, what was the Pinto gas tank?
I don't know.
Remember that one?
Yeah,
it was cheaper to let people die and pay the insurance than it was to fix the Pinto gas tank.
Oh well.
a brilliant decision by one of our biggest companies in the world.
Yep. So our next item is the one that we were talking about having trouble with.
Oh yeah, this one here. Yeah, we don't have a picture with this one.
No, we don't, but we do have a title.
I don't have one.
You don't have, I'll just read it. To an oil and gas industry already beaten down by a price crash, EPA Administrator Gina McCarthy added this message on Wednesday. The world is switching to renewable sources such as wind and solar. Quote, the clean energy train has left the station, folks, end quote. McCarthy,
interesting statement from her.
Yep. McCarthy told this to an audience of 2,800 people at CERA Week, C-E-R-A Week, and this is from expressnews.com. And we will get back to this article with another statement from another person, which is basically underscoring this. This particular
That was very near the end, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I think it was the last item. Expressnews.com. Everything I tried, it was blocked.
Yeah,
You know?
I couldn't pick it up. Usually I can go through a back door somewhere and find it. I couldn't do it.
This was a difficult one, and the problem was I could get in on my computer, but Tom couldn't get in on his. So
Yeah.
if you could go there, you can try to find it, see if you get there. But
A little bit of background here.
yep,
She's making these comments as the country's first ever export shipment of fracked liquefied natural gas was leaving Houston, Texas for Brazil.
for Brazil.
Yeah, so that's starting to happen.
Well,
And there's an interesting thing. She put a little spin on this thing. She said that the jump that we just talked about was likely due to better data, not to a recent upswing in emissions.
right.
She may be right. She
Yeah.
may be right. But I
Okay.
thought she's kind of minimizing it here.
Yeah. Now we have an item from vtdigger.org. Got a title for that one?
Vermont Guard signs on for solar power in Windham County.
Wow. Developers are proposing a second largest solar array in Windham County, Vermont, and the Vermont Army National Guard appears to be an enthusiastic partner in the project. The State Public Service Board will consider an application for the 1.8 megawatt net metered project in Westminster.
I looked this up on the map. It's you're not going to see it from the highway. Nobody's going to see this at all. So,
Okay.
So they're not going to be complaining about it. Just north of Westminster Village, there's an industrial park, and you don't see that from the highway. You access it from Route 5, and this is back in there.
There you go.
And it's also interesting in that the Guard has been basically ordered to increase their use of renewables.
Yes,
So this is playing along with that,
yes.
which is a good thing.
There's a couple of different reasons for that, one of which is renewables are cheaper, so
Yeah.
it's kinder to their budget. Another of which is the military has been very much after renewables because renewables are easier to deal with in the field and you get more people killed if you're trying to supply.
We talked about this several times.
Several times.
The military is the biggest consumer of energy
Right.
in the United States.
It's also
The Navy uses
Yeah.
oil, the Air
Yeah.
Force uses oil.
the
You move these trucks on gas
yeah.
and diesel fuel. I mean,
And the military is constantly testifying in front of Congress. Every year in the last 4 years, I've seen them up against Congress saying, no, you have to understand, climate change is not only real, but it's a big security problem.
yes,
And
it is.
they,
Absolutely.
the Congress has people that don't want to hear that, but there it is.
We're fighting a war over in Afghanistan. We don't need, well, we can't be getting the oil from Afghanistan. We
Yeah,
got to truck it
it's
in
got to
from
get
somewhere
trucked
else.
in if we're using oil.
Yeah.
The
And the
people
trucks
we're up
use
against,
oil.
yeah, the people we're up against have yet to figure out how to prevent the sun from shining on the solar panels.
They're
Okay.
working on it.
Yeah, we're up to Friday, February 26th, and this next one comes from West Fair Online. You got a title for that?
Let me. Oh, Connecticut's last coal power plant to be replaced with natural gas. I'm going to try and get this picture.
Get a
up here.
picture up. Owners of the last coal-fired power plant in Connecticut, Public Service Enterprise Group, have announced plans to replace the Bridgewater Harbor Station power plant with a natural gas-fired facility, ooh, hold your nose, by the end of the decade. It has provided electricity, that is the coal-fired power plant, for over 50 years.
This is a big plant.
Yeah.
It's right in the tip of Bridgeport.
Yep.
I didn't even know Bridgeport had a harbor. My father grew up there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so Bridgeport's
Really?
close to me, but they have a nice little harbor. I'm sure it's no longer being used commercially like it was, maybe 100 years ago.
Well, when I lived in Kingston, Massachusetts, I lived just downstream on an estuary from a marina which used to have a shipbuilding operation going on, and that point where they had a shipyard, the river at high tide was about 100 feet across, and about, I'm going to guess, 10 feet deep. They had little ships. That was a long time ago.
What you're trying to tell me? Yeah.
A long time ago. Yeah, things change.
A little takeaway here. This didn't come from the article. It came from something that was on the same page as the article, but it's interesting. Based upon emissions levels and demographics of the area where the plant is located, Bridgeport Harbor Station is ranked as the 8th worst in the U.S. for environmental injustices by the NAACP.
The NAACP is ranking it for environmental injustices.
That's their word.
Very interesting. That
well,
is interesting.
Reading between the lines is that this part of Bridgeport has a large black population.
Well, yeah, this has been the environmental thing has been a serious problem around poor communities and ethnic communities of all kinds. Okay, our next item comes from Clean Technica. And you have a title for that, Tom, or should I just go?
I do have that one. Low carbon policies could cut 175,000 U.S. deaths per year.
Right.
We've been talking about the climate changes, and we've mentioned this a few times, but this is a very significant event, and nobody's really looking at it.
Right. Up to 175,000 annual pollution-related deaths and $250 billion in health costs could be prevented by 2030 by implementing low-carbon policies in the U.S. to prevent a 2 degrees Celsius rise in temperature, according to analysis from Duke University and NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies. This is from Clean Technica, and I want to point out that 175,000 people and the $250 billion are annual figures. Those are annual figures. What they're saying is something on the order of 500 people dying a day in the United States.
Well, these people aren't getting sick from the bad air. They're getting sick from something else.
Well, or bad air. They may be getting
dying.
Sick, but they're dying. Air. Yeah, they're dying. This is also premature deaths. This is not somebody dying a couple of months early. This is a person dying much, much too early. We also I've seen figures on people, the number of months the average person loses because of air pollution. And in Western Europe, as I recall, it was 7 to 9 months out of their lives that they're on average losing because of air pollution. Thank you very much, fossil fuel industry. Nice to see you go.
Well, this article is mostly about the effects of coal.
Yes.
So natural gas burns clean.
Yes.
With basically just CO2 emissions.
Yep.
So it's not affecting health, but it is affecting climate.
It's affecting the climate, and the other thing is it has a figure that comes to mind that I have read is that 5.7% of all of the methane in the natural gas that we use, that we pump, 5.7% is lost directly into the atmosphere through leaks.
We're going to be talking about that a little later on, I think.
Okay. Our next item is from Carbon Brief, and this has to do with UK CO2 emissions.
UK emissions fall again after a record drop in coal use in 2015.
This is a really interesting thing because the government of the UK is not pursuing renewable power.
I've got a map or
That's
a
the
graph
one.
I'm going to bring up.
Yeah, put it up. This is interesting because if you look at this, it looks like coal peaked about 1955 and it's been going down ever since.
That's exactly right.
And it was up above 200 million tons a year, and now it's probably around 40. million tons. So it's down to about a sixth of what it was. And this is having its effect. The synopsis I've got here says the UK's CO2 emissions fell by 4.3% in 2015 on the back of the largest recorded annual drop in coal use outside of a miners' strike. Carbon Brief analysis shows. This leaves UK CO2 emissions at 31.5% below 1990 levels and at its lowest level since the start of the Industrial Revolution. And when I read that, I said to myself, what? You've got to be kidding me. And when I looked at the graph and I saw that it started...
exactly what was happening.
Yeah, except 1858 is after the Industrial Revolution was well underway.
Picky.
Picky, yes, okay. There we go. So with that, do we have more on that one, Tom, or you want to...
Yeah, there was something I wanted. Oh yeah, they explain why this is happening.
Yes.
Okay, and the first is a number of aging coal-fired plants have closed.
Yep.
The second, and they're talking about the UK here, UK's largest coal burning station, and it's very, very large. It's six power plants in one. Been converted to burn wood pellets.
Yes, Drax.
Okay. Third, the profitability has plummeted as a result of falling wholesale electricity prices and UK's carbon tax. And a result of this, wholesale prices are falling as a result of cheaper gas and a rise of renewables.
Right.
And this is something people don't think about.
Yeah.
Renewables generate power at near zero cost once built.
Yes.
You don't have to pay for fuel.
You don't have to pay for fuel, although the Drax plant, as you pointed out, had gone from coal to wood pellets. Yeah. And they are getting, or maybe it's wood chips.
Wood pellets from us.
They're getting them from us, and we're shipping, as I recall, 80 million tons of wood pellets a year, and half of our exports in wood pellets go to that one plant.
Is that so?
Yeah.
It's a huge plant.
It's a big plant.
Huge plant.
Big plant. And I'm not really happy about those wood pellets being burned in that plant because natural gas is, I think, worse than coal, but I don't think wood pellets are all that great on the environment if you're going to harvest them the way that's being harvested.
Really clean, not unless the stack gas is really clean.
Right.
Well, it's like you're still burning something in a wood stove.
Right. Yes, it is.
Wood pellets aren't any cleaner.
Well, they clean up their stack gases more than
a little bit more.
But at the same time, and I've talked to people here in Vermont who say, yeah, well, if you got wood and it's being harvested locally and it's being burned in a way which is clean, and the cleanest ways of burning wood pellets or wood chips or just wood.
It's to gasify them.
It's to gasify them and put them through an internal combustion machine. You get 90% efficiency by generating both electricity and heat. Or you can get close to 90% efficiency just by concentrating on the heat.
Everything you're saying is right, but it isn't happening over here.
Well, not the way it is in some places in Europe. Drax, I don't know what they do with their waste heat.
Another second-order consequence is not a good consequence.
Yeah.
They're denuding the forests.
They're denuding the forests.
So the
these forests
carbon
down
sinks
in
effect of the forests are being diminished.
Right. These forests down in Georgia and places like that are, as far as from what I understand, being clear cut.
I think they are.
And that's just not good for this is not. And so they've got a thing going on in Europe right now where they're looking at the question of whether they want to call for forest biomass renewable at all.
That's debatable right now.
Yeah, although
it should be renewable,
right?
But the way they're sometimes really abusing the forests.
They're abusing the forests, and they've got to have clean burning, clean combustion, because forest biomass, if it's not with clean combustion, is just a nightmare, and it can be extremely clean. It can be as clean as natural gas, but. Should we move to Saturday?
Yeah, the next one's interesting.
All right, this is Saturday, February 27th.
New legislation would make solar panels a requirement for new San Francisco buildings.
Wow, think of that. This is from cron4.com. That's KRON4.com. New legislation would require all new construction in San Francisco, both residential and commercial, to have solar panels installed. The Renewable Energy Ordinance would make San Francisco the first and only major city in the United States to require solar panels on all new buildings.
Well, I read the article. It sounds draconian.
Yeah.
But it really isn't.
Yeah.
They're making allowances, but they basically want you to have a section of your roof that's visible by the sun.
Yep.
And have the ability at a hopefully soon later date to put solar panels or solar hot water heaters up there.
Right. And, you know, solar hot water, of course, is very efficient.
Oh, yeah. And it's old technology.
It's old technology. Yeah. Okay. Carrying on to Valley News.
A study finds flaws in a Vermont energy policy.
Wow.
And it's been there.
It's been there.
I've read about it.
All right.
It didn't hit it. It didn't hit home, though.
Anyone who sees Vermont's renewable energy installations may be surprised to learn that the state's utilities get 0% of their power from wind and solar energy. That is the number cited in a report on allowing renewable energy credits to be sold to utilities in southern New England. This is in Valley News, and I will tell you the figure 0% is wrong.
It's wrong.
It's wrong.
What's the right number?
The right number? Well, Norwich, for example, has got solar providing all of its municipal electric needs,
yeah.
And they get energy credits, and those energy credit, the energy is supplied to the utilities.
Yeah.
Norwich retires the credits.
Yeah.
So the utilities...
And they sell it to somebody down in Connecticut who's using them to pollute.
No, they're not. They're retiring the credits.
Oh, they're retiring.
They're just retiring them.
Okay.
Yeah, the person
that goes against what this article
Yes,
says.
it sure does. Well, what's happening here is you have to be very clear about what's going on. What happens with these renewable energy credits is, in order to encourage people to invest in renewable power, various governments have said, okay, you can create a renewable energy credit. For every megawatt hour of energy you produce, you get one credit. And then, you know, there are people, organizations that are required for one reason or another to put their energy, to get their energy from renewable resources. But it's really difficult for them to do it. Utilities are particularly targeted in this because they will be set from some sort of state mandate saying you have to have 30% of your electricity from renewables.
Well, it's happening in other states.
Yeah,
right
and they
now,
look
Vermont
at this,
isn't doing it.
and they look at this and they say, well, wait a minute, we don't have the renewables available.
Yeah.
So what they'll do is a person in Vermont who produces electric energy from his largest solar array, even a relatively small one, every megawatt hour he gets a credit. He can sell it to those people, and they can say, this is our power.
But once he sells it, in Vermont, it's no longer considered renewable.
Yeah, that's right. What he has sold is his right to call the electricity renewable. So
Correct.
what he's done is he's said, okay, I'm not interested in calling my electricity renewable. I'm just interested in getting it from the sun. I'm going to sell it to these folks so they can continue to burn coal.
Yep, that's exactly what's happening.
There's a positive side to this. The people who are getting these credits from their solar or wind installations are getting credits that are given to them because they've invested. And this encourages people to invest. The downside of it is the credits they sell encourage the utilities to continue burning coal. So yeah, it's good, it's bad. The thing about the state's utilities, 0% of their power from wind or solar, I don't know. I don't know how. I know that the students went through and they looked very closely at this, but I think that it is misleading. It's a misleading statement.
Yeah, at the very least, it's confusing.
It's confusing. There's no question about
They
it.
do say here, though, Vermont will, as of next January, Vermont will join neighboring states in requiring utilities to get a set amount of their power from renewables.
Yes.
That's expected to help keep the energy credits in state.
Right. Yes.
So this is kind of a temporary situation.
Right. And things are changing. There's no question about it. But nevertheless, our next one comes from Tree Hugger, and that does have a little picture associated with it.
I'll bring the picture
You'll
up
bring
first,
the picture up first,
if I can.
and then you'll
Come on, you get up
then
there.
you'll
There we go.
there you go.
And it's a very interesting picture there. This is from 1958. Get a pretty good look at that car. That's what in 1958 they thought we'd be driving now.
Yep.
And if you look at those dishes in the back of the car.
Parabolic dishes, my gosh.
That's the solar panels.
Yeah, how in the world do they think they can get that much power from those two little teeny things? Well, they hadn't done the engineering yet. That's the problem. Okay, what do we got for a title for this?
Well, this is a prediction. Electric cars will cause the next oil crisis. And that's what the article's about. And
right.
there is some teeth to what they're saying.
Yeah, sooner than you think. A prediction that electric cars will cause the next oil crisis. There used to be a cartoon series called Closer Than We Think. Now Bloomberg Business has a video series, Sooner Than You Think. The first episode of the series suggests that the electric car could cause the next oil crisis. And of course what they're saying is, as people adopt more and more electric cars, the oil companies are going to find it more and more difficult to sell oil.
Absolutely. This particular article has graphs on that exact thing.
Yep.
And they pictured 3 different scenarios. For 60% growth in EV sales, which is what's happening now, oil will crash by 2023.
Well, I got news for you. EV sales are already causing trouble, but they're causing trouble in a market where you have things called heat pumps. And it's cheaper to replace your furnace when it comes time to do it with a heat pump than to replace it with a furnace. And the heat pump is going to work on electricity, and it's going to cost about as much to run as burning cordwood.
Yep.
So why would you burn oil? And people all over Vermont are having these heat pumps installed. A year ago, I'd say heat pump, and people's eyes would glaze over. They couldn't understand what I was talking about. Now it seems like a lot of people know about heat pumps.
Well, the builders are getting savvy too.
Buildings are getting savvy, and the people, ordinary people, are saying, heat pump, what is that? That's what they were saying. Now they're saying, yeah, I know about those. Those are the things that we've got in the refrigerators. The heat pumps in the refrigerators pump the heat from inside the unit and put it into the kitchen. Well, that's true. But here we're talking...
heat pumps that are generating hot water in the cellar, too.
That's right.
It's sucking the heat out of the air in the cellar.
That's right. And anybody who needs to replace a water heater in the cellar and has a moisture problem in the cellar should really consider that.
Yep.
Because
it sucks the moisture out of the air.
It sucks the moisture out of the air, and you put it down the drain or into the sump, and so you can do the cost of a dehumidifier, not a big dehumidifier, but a dehumidifier, plus supply yourself with hot water for a relatively low cost.
In that picture there's a little box in the lower left called News Flash.
Yes.
And I got a copy of it here so I can read it.
Oh, really?
So it's interesting because this is 1958.
Yep.
The automobile industry may be producing cars driven by solar power in the years ahead. The vice president of Chrysler predicted. We know how to get electrical energy from sunlight by means of silicon converters.
How about that?
About transistors,
silicon converters.
Yeah, well.
Solar panels. Solar panels. That's what they are.
If we continue to increase the efficiency of these converters, which is in fact what really has happened.
Absolutely has.
And if we're able to develop small efficient solar cells, energy storage cells, which is happening as we speak. Solar powered cars will be feasible. It's a little blurry here.
It's very blurry. Yeah.
They agree that compounding knowledge of nuclear and solar energy is bringing into sight more abundant power for people everywhere.
Wow, solar and nuclear.
Yeah.
Well,
1958.
Jason Cooper told me that he said he doesn't oppose nuclear power, and he thinks that the perfect nuclear power plant already is in existence. It can supply us with 100% of what we need.
It's the sun.
The sun.
Absolutely, absolutely. He knows what he's talking about.
I think he does. Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, I think we can.
We
The
have
biggest
an item here from Delmarva Daily Times.
Delmarva is the Delaware, Maryland, Virginia Peninsula.
Yeah.
It's that little hunk of land hanging down from Delaware.
On the east side of Chesapeake
Yep.
Bay, where they have lots of crabs and a fair amount of polluted water.
I got the wrong picture coming up.
Oh, well, you know
I'm
what?
going to leave you up there
You're going to leave me up there?
for a while, yep.
Okay. I've got to do something with this thing for a while too, because it's being tentative.
Well, I'll put us both
Oh,
up.
look at that. Well, that's our next picture, waiting to go up. But we're talking about
but
Delmarva.
That's coming up. That's
Do we
not-
have do we have a title for the Delmarva?
The
Daily
biggest
thing?
solar farm in Maryland may rise in Somerset. This is a big solar
It's a
farm.
big solar farm.
1,000 acres.
Yeah, corn and soybean fields in Somerset County, Maryland, formerly ticketed for wind turbines, may now become home of one of the largest solar plants in the eastern United States. Algonquin Power and Utilities Corporation of Canada has plans to collect up to 150 megawatts of power from the area. And this is big.
15,000 homes.
15,000 homes. Now, the one thing that we should point out is that this is not a single farm. It's a bunch of
That's correct.
of fields.
It's a bunch of farms.
They're all over the place, but they're kind of tied together.
5 solar arrays and a substation.
Okay.
And when they add them all together, it's 1,000 acres.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
You know, I think about these things. I don't like the way solar panels look out in the middle of a nice agricultural farm. But you know, as a kid who was born in Kansas and largely raised in Illinois, I got to tell you, I'm not very happy about farms that are growing corn either.
Well, there's a lot of things out there that are eyesores.
Yeah, and
I think transmission lines are eyesores. I
Well,
recognize we need them.
yeah, and the
some
corn.
people think ski areas are eyesores.
Yes, the corn. You know, if you grow up in corn country, you're going to be in a place where there's huge fields of mud with rubble in it 6 months of the year, and that's what a cornfield is.
It certainly looks like that around here.
It does. It looks the same in Illinois, but nevertheless, there it is. So you know, I think what I'm saying is, corn, solar arrays. You know, what I would like to see them do is figure out a good way to combine agriculture and solar arrays, and that is being done in a lot of places.
They don't seem to interfere very much with cattle.
They don't. You know, the English put sheep under their arrays.
Oh, sure,
and
cows.
Yeah, and cows. Cows, you have to raise the panels up a little bit higher because they stand a little bit taller. But you know,
that.
You don't want goats under them,
That's
though.
not a deal killer.
You don't want goats under them, though.
Well, pretty soon the goats are on top of them.
Yeah, they'll try to be, and they'll also try to eat the cables.
Try to eat them.
But anyway, we are up to Sunday, February 28th, Agriland.
This kind of correlates with using the wood pellets and denuding forests.
Yes.
So the headline is here: Europe is expected to plant 600,000 hectares of forestry to combat climate change. Now, I'm not.
That's 1.5 million acres.
I'm not much on hectares.
It's
so
1.5 million acres.
1.5 million acres,
Yeah.
or 2,500 square miles.
2,500 square miles.
50 by 50.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay, investment in forestry over the next 5 years will have a big impact on the environment, as it will result in planting 600,000 hectares, 1.5 million acres in Europe, according to Dermot Ryan, senior advisor to the European Commission, Phil Hogan. Now, what they're doing is they are investing in the forestry. Why are they doing that, Tom? Are they going to cut this stuff down?
It's a climate sink.
It's a climate sink.
Yeah.
What they want to do is make this investment in order to take carbon out of the air.
Exactly.
Yeah, one of the things about trees that makes them very, very good at taking carbon out of the air is that you don't have to monitor them very much. It doesn't take a lot of...
They take care of themselves, don't they?
They tend to do that. Yeah.
Now, I don't know if this is a definite thing or if it's just a plan.
I don't know.
I hope it happens. It'll go a long way to offset what we're doing in our south by denuding the forest.
Well, we've got to stop that. And the people at Drax have got to stop using wood pellets. They've got to come up with a better source of fuel. And there are better sources out there.
Oh, yeah.
And the same thing is true, I think, of corn ethanol. The idea of plant, and this is something, you know, as a kid living in Illinois, when I was in 3rd grade, we were taught, you know, and I lived in a farming community. And the kids who were in there, their fathers went out on tractors. And we were taught in school that corn is one of the most destructive agricultural products you can get involved with.
I have heard that before.
Corn, tobacco, and cotton
Yep.
are the 3 really bad ones.
And it's probably our 3 biggest exports.
Well, you know, there are better crops for ethanol if you want to do ethanol than corn is.
Oh yeah.
And switchgrass is one. But another thing is you don't have to go from switchgrass to ethanol either. You can go from switchgrass to butanol or other organic compounds, some of which can burn just like gasoline. You just put it in the tank and drive the car.
We talked about that.
We've talked about it a few
I'm trying
times.
to think of the word. It's drop-in.
It's a drop-in, yeah.
Drop-in,
It's a
yeah.
drop-in replacement. Okay, should we go on?
Something's going around in my head about this. I guess we might as well go on.
Okay, Monday.
It's escaped me.
Okay. Monday, February 29th, and we're finally up to that beautiful picture.
Oh, yes. Let me
Yes.
get that picture up.
Let's get the picture up. This is from Renews, and Tom will tell you the title.
Gemini, which is the name of the wind farm, delivers its first power.
How do you like that?
It's been a building for a few years and it's finally online. Or at
Okay.
least it's beginning to come online.
The first electricity has been generated and delivered to the grid from the 600 megawatt Gemini wind farm in the Dutch North Sea.
This is the first Dutch farm. We
Yeah.
talked about Danish farms.
2 110
Kilometers, yeah.
kilometer cables relay power from the wind park to the shore, where electricity is distributed through the Tenant high voltage grid to Emshaven. This is from Renews, and that is a picture of a ship on stilts.
I'm fascinated by that picture. That ship has everything needed on it
Yeah,
to erect a turbine.
Yeah.
If you look in the picture, you'll see in the background a whole bunch of little yellowish dots
Yep.
on the horizon. Every one of them is the foundation for a solar panel,
for a wind turbine.
A wind turbine.
Yep,
And this ship there, it fascinates me.
it's
Those
amazing.
vertical things that you see sticking up there, the white ones,
White ones.
are the towers.
Yep,
Okay, those black things you see sticking up there
are the stilts.
are the stilts that enable the ship to rise above the tide so it's not rocking and rolling.
Yeah,
And you really can't see them. You can just barely see the edges of them. All of the blades are sitting there on the deck.
Yep.
And if you really look for them, then the cells are there too.
yep.
So this ship just goes from point to point to point to point, and I imagine in a very short number of hours puts up a new turbine.
Yep,
It's fascinating technology.
it could be that they're putting up a new turbine every day while
I
they're
bet
doing
you they're
that.
doing it faster than that.
They might be. They might even work round the clock. You know, they can do a lot of the stuff at
They can do this at
night.
night, yeah.
And I was fascinated by that crane. That is a big crane.
It is that.
Yeah, but you know, one of the interesting things about it is I don't know how tall that ship is, not including the stilts, but I would guess it's probably 10 stories.
Oh yeah.
These things don't look all that big.
No,
they are gigantic.
That's a lot bigger than it looks like in that picture.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
you'd get a sense of scale if you knew how tall that tower was going to be. And,
Well-
and it's modern state of the art, so it's probably
You can
150, 200 feet.
you
maybe
can
more.
see the windows on the bridge of the ship, at the top of the back end.
They're very small.
They don't look they don't look very big, do they? So, you know, and the idea that they would just, you know, kind of crank those stilts up, take them off the floor of the ocean, go down to the next place, crank them back down again, lift themselves up, and put that in again in a new place.
It's fascinating.
It's fascinating.
It's a giant machine.
Yeah, we've had pictures of this kind of thing before, but it's
this is a very good picture of it.
It's a very nice picture, and I'm always fascinated by these pictures. Our next item is from Clean Technica. Do we want to go to that?
Clean Technica again, huh?
Clean Technica.
Huge cuts. Oh, this is fascinating.
Yeah.
Huge cuts in brick CO2 emissions coming up from the startup Biomason.
And you know, this is something, it blows my mind.
Mine too.
The numbers in this. Biomason is a North Carolina startup company that makes bricks without heat or clay. About 8% of global carbon emissions come from making bricks. Just think of that. 8% of our emissions come from bricks.
According they've been making bricks with heat for 2,000 years.
Oh, yeah.
3,000 years.
Well, you know, if you look at the way that it was done in the colonial times, it was
done by solar power.
Well, yes.
Well, they do that now today in the Arab countries.
Yeah, but the bricks they made around here, they had brick making kilns that they
had
and
kilns,
they were
right.
just extraordinarily wasteful, but they were almost as wasteful as the kilns that they used for making creosote. But these are made 8% of global emissions, according to the company's co-founder, citing information from the CPA. The Biomason process creates no carbon emissions. This is from Clean Technica. And by the way, manufacturers cement is like a quarter of
a tremendous
huge
user of energy.
And if we can get away from those two, it would reduce our use of
well, she's breaking new ground here.
Yeah.
It may be possible.
Yeah.
What you suggest may be possible. Let me read this thing quick about what she has been doing, because she's thinking way outside the box.
Yep.
And coming up with something practical.
Yep.
Every brick starts with sand packed into rectangular molds, so they're using sand instead of clay.
Yes.
And many bricks today are made out of sand.
Okay.
The gray construction bricks are made out of sand.
Okay.
The molds are then inoculated with bacteria. So bugs are making these bricks. The bacteria wrap themselves around the grains of sand. With each bacteria-covered grain of sand acting as a nucleus, calcium carbonate crystals begin to form around it. It's like clamshells.
Yes.
Okay. An irrigation system feeds the bricks nutrient-rich water, which they recycle, by the way.
Yeah.
Over the course of several days to facilitate the process. The crystals grow larger and larger, filling the gaps between the grains of sand. After 3 to 5 days, the bricks are ready to use. I mean, this blows my mind.
And it's mind-blowing. It would be nice to know where they get the calcium carbonate, though.
I would imagine seashells.
I would think seashells as well. That's what I would think.
Yeah.
But if they could get the calcium from something other than seashhells, if they could,
the carbonate from the air,
and they could get the carbon dioxide from the air, and they could make this into a carbon sink.
Yeah, they could. Where are they going to get the calcium, though?
Yeah, that's a good question. But you
can't mine it, I don't think.
I don't know.
You're going to mine it as calcium carbonate.
You are, which means you're back to seashells probably. But anyway, that's
either new seashells or ancient seashells.
Yes, that's right. That is correct.
Whatever it is, if you want to find out more, look this article up. This is fascinating. And this woman's fascinating.
Yep, this is February 29th, Monday.
This is really thinking outside the box, and that's exactly what she decided to do.
Yes.
Good article.
She was thinking outside the box on a process that goes on inside a box. How about that? For a joke.
You get 5 points for that one.
Oh, I do?
That's a good one.
I deserved -5, I think. Anyway,
back to that
our
one.
next item comes from Smithsonian.com. And it has to do with
the size of the California methane leak isn't the scariest part of the story.
Oh, man. Yeah. This is an opinion piece with the title that Tom just read. Though methane is a powerful greenhouse gas and the Aliso Canyon event was huge, we see an even bigger problem. This is Smithsonian talking, but I think they're right. There are hundreds of similar gas storage facilities and nothing is monitoring them.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Out of sight, out of mind.
And that is scary.
That's scary. This thing, how many tons was it losing? Thousands of tons a day of methane was just blowing into the atmosphere.
8,000 tons from, oh, that's another one. That's
yeah.
107,000 tons were lost during the time that they knew about the leak. From the time they discovered it to the time it was plugged.
107,000 tons.
107,000.
What do you suppose a ton of natural gas costs? A lot of money. Those people lost a lot of money, and they're going to lose more money because they've got about 14,000 people suing them for kicking them out of their houses.
Yeah. This is the equivalent of greenhouse gas emissions from 500,000 cars.
Bad news, but this is just one site. Another thing, too, that's really annoying about this is that because they were storing methane, natural gas, in an oil well, it was picking up all of the junk in the oil well that could vaporize.
They specifically mentioned benzene.
Benzene and toluene.
Which are carcinogens.
Well, the
benzene is.
Yeah, toluene is too.
Benzene with an E, by the way.
Yes.
There's also a benzene with an I, and I don't know the difference.
Toluene, I remember somebody was telling me in a chemical plant that the plant next door had toluene. And, what does toluene do to you? I asked somebody.
I know about trinitrotoluene.
Oh, no.
TNT.
Yeah, right. Boom. But the answer that I got was, oh, toluene's good for you. It preserves your liver.
Oh.
You want to know about being
Here,
pickled?
my dear, have a teaspoonful of toluene for breakfast.
Right. And I'll bury you for lunch.
Oh, boy.
This stuff is very nasty. By the way, don't have teaspoons of toluene. Bad news. Bad for you. But it's, and these leaks, we've got these things all over the country. We've got hundreds and hundreds of them, and they're using both old oil wells, but also they're using salt domes.
Yep.
Brining caverns
Yep.
in salt domes, which are unbelievably big. They
Yep.
can be like 100, 200 yards across and a mile tall, just a big hole in the ground that is completely capped over, and
they're putting the gas in there under tremendous pressure.
Under tremendous
pressure.
pressure.
There's a leak. It's a big leak.
It's a big leak. That's right. So this is, and the people at Smithsonian, yeah, I agree with them. Big problem. I don't like it. Let's pass a law, say you're not allowed to do it. Okay. Should we move on?
We should move along.
To the Guardian. Our next item's from the Guardian. What do you got there, Tom?
A top lobbying group is making a historic green energy U-turn.
Wow.
This is an interesting story.
It is an interesting story.
This relates to our first article, I think.
The UK's biggest energy lobbying group, this is the biggest energy lobbying group, has shifted its position on green energy and will start campaigning for low-carbon alternatives for the first time in what environmental campaigners are describing as a watershed moment. The chief executive of Energy UK said the shift is urgent. And what they're talking about here, of course, is the environmental impacts of carbon emissions. And this is interesting because these people had been lobbying in favor of fossil fuels, and they have just switched.
Their turn.
They've done a U-turn.
Yep.
And I wonder whether the government of the UK is going to listen to this, because I'm starting to get a sense that there are people in that government who are starting to listen.
Well, there could very well be a sea change in the British government anyhow.
There could be.
Things are politically changing over there.
Yeah.
This guy Corbyn is like the Bernie Sanders of Britain. And he's looking very good as being the next prime minister.
Bernie Sanders is a moderate.
Compared to Corbyn.
No, compared to the people he's up against.
Oh, okay. We'll give you a quick takeaway from here. Why have they changed their mind? Falling demand, increasingly competitive renewables, storage, interconnectors, demand response. This is the blueprint for the electricity system just 15 years hence. And it's telling that it comes from an industry body rather than a green think tank.
Right. Well, Tom, we got to move along because we've got a number of items coming up, and we've only got about 10 minutes to do it. Divers.
We'll pull it in here.
Yep.
We got a picture here.
We got a picture. There it is. This is from The Guardian. This is an interesting guy. He's a solar installer. Just think about that, folks. This is a solar installer. Or he's working for a solar installer.
Well, the whole article's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's a good article, March 1st. And this is in The Guardian.
Yep.
Got a title?
World's biggest floating solar farm powers up outside London.
Yep. The world is nearing, work is nearing completion on what will be soon be Europe's largest floating solar farm. Actually, the largest in the world for a short period of time because it's bigger when it's being built. But few are likely to see the 23,000 solar panels on the QE2 reservoir near London. It is invisible to all but a few Heathrow passengers and a few flats in the neighboring estates. And what that guy is doing is he is anchoring the solar panels, which you can see in the background,
to the floor.
To the floor of the reservoir.
Yeah.
So that's
this is interesting because these panels will generate almost all the electricity that they use for the water treatment plant.
Yeah.
This is presently something they're buying off the grid.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's going to wipe all of that right out.
Yep.
And why put solar panels on the water?
Why not?
That's
really?
Pretty much exactly what they're saying. The answer is that the water is there.
Yeah.
And might as well be used for this purpose.
Yep. And the solar panels work better when they're more efficient when they're floating on water.
Cooled by water.
That's
yep.
right. Okay.
And they're covering 6% of the reservoir, and they won't have any effect on the ecosystem.
Yep. Our next item is from Clean Technica. It's about a New York State Common Retirement Fund. What does it say, Tom?
New York State pension funds lost $5.3 billion from fossil fuel holdings over 3 years.
Do you think they should have divested?
That's
California
exactly
did the same thing.
That's exactly what
and in Vermont, we're saying we should maybe. Do you think we should think about it a little while, divesting from coal? The New York
State.
The
governor wants to divest,
and the state treasurer doesn't want to. And unfortunately for the state treasurer or people of Vermont, the state treasurer can say, "Oh, we've only got a few $100s in coal." Yeah, why do we have only a few $100s? Because the $1 million that we've had in coal has all disappeared. Because the price of coal stock has gone down.
Because it's been a lousy investment.
It's a lousy investment. The New York State Common Retirement Fund lost $5.3 billion over the last 3 years by remaining invested in fossil fuel holdings instead of reinvesting in green companies. They would have made money if they'd reinvested in green companies. These are findings according to a new report from Corporate Knights, an investment research company. So,
interesting takeaway from the executive director of that research company.
Yep.
If it's wrong to cause climate change, it's wrong to profit from climate change.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a mouthful.
It is. Okay, our next item comes from CNews Renewables. And this is about wind. What do we got?
The U.S. leads the world in wind generation with 190 terawatt hours in 2015.
Wow.
Let me clarify this. We don't have necessarily the most installed wind, but it's the most efficient. We got very good winds,
Yeah.
and we're leading the world in a generation.
This year, we won't lead them. I'm sorry. No, the Chinese have been putting in wind power too fast. And
well, they got
that's
nearly
part of the
double the
problem.
capacity that we have now.
Yeah, and part of the problem that we've got with this is that their figure for last year includes stuff that's coming online that was only on for 6 months or 3 months or whatever.
Let me find that picture.
The picture I've got coming up, U.S. produced over 900 million megawatt hours of wind power in 2015, more than any other country in the world, even as China has nearly doubled the capacity. The American Wind Energy Association has said more than 31% of Iowa's in-state electricity generation came from wind. And if you look at the map and you look at Vermont, you'll see it says Vermont got 15.4% of its electricity from wind. Again, this is from Siemens Renewables.
The map's a little bit confusing, but the darker the state, the greater the percentage of its overall electricity is generated by wind.
Yep. Okay, we got to move along here, Tom.
Yeah, we're up to the last day.
We are up to Wednesday, March 2nd. And
got a picture
this
here,
is
too.
from ABC 57 News.
How'd you
Got a
get that?
title for this?
Solar-powered plane closer to resuming record-setting global flight.
Ah, isn't this nice?
Yeah, we talked about
We
this
talked
about a
about
year
this,
ago.
and then they fried their batteries flying
Yep.
from Japan to Hawaii, made it to Hawaii, but the batteries had to be replaced. After 7 months, Solar Impulse 2 has returned to the sky as it prepares to resume its record-setting round-the-world flight. The huge sun-powered plane, which smashed the longest solar record last summer from Japan to Hawaii, flew a 90-minute maintenance and equipment checking flight.
It started, well, I'll just review this. It started in Abu Dhabi
Abu Dhabi.
and continued to Oman, which is very nearby,
Yep.
then to India,
Yep.
then to Myanmar, aka Burma, then to China, then to Japan, and then this big long trip to Hawaii.
And
where they fried the batteries
their next trip is going to be a big long trip
from Hawaii to California.
from Hawaii to California. So they're going to have an opportunity to fry their batteries again.
I don't think so, because most of what they did in the last year was put a battery cooling system in.
Really?
That's
okay.
what it said.
Well, I bet they put batteries in too.
I'm sure they did.
But this is an interesting development. And
little quick takeaway from this.
Yeah.
The plane's wingspan is greater than a Boeing 747.
It sure is.
Okay. It flies about as fast as a car. It's not.
This thing will fly at 30 miles an hour.
Yeah. And it weighs about as much as an SUV.
So
even though
if
it's
you've
a big
got
plane, it doesn't weigh very much.
Yes. You've got a plane that has a wingspan bigger than a 747 and it weighs about as much as an SUV. Now tell me that's, and you know, when they're taking off, they want to make sure that these wings don't drag because they kind of tip downward.
Well, they got people
And they have
riding
people
bicycles.
riding bicycles
Holding the
next to
wings
them,
up.
holding the wings up until they'll hold themselves up. And you know, I mean, this is a bizarre thing if you're used to
Well,
flying.
they're doing it to prove a point.
They are.
You know, this isn't going to. They're not going to institute commercial service within the next 6 months.
Right.
But it's still very interesting.
We have to do our last piece, which is from Renew Economy. What do you got for a title on this, Tom?
Baseload power. It's a myth used to defend the fossil fuel industry.
How do you like that?
This is a man bites dog story.
Yeah, this is kind of like what we've been saying for years. This whole business of baseload power is a piece of mythology. It's the same conference Gina McCarthy was addressing, and at this conference they had the head of the largest network in the world, the largest grid network in the world. At a conference in Houston, leaders of the global fossil power industry were shocked to hear the chairman of the biggest network owner in China dismiss the importance of coal, oil, and baseload power. And he basically said, this is old school stuff. It's going to get replaced with renewables, period.
Well, he made a couple of good statements. The only hurdle to overcome is mindset.
There you go. We have all the technology.
There's no technical challenge at
Yeah,
all.
absolutely.
Baseload, and this is also his quote. Baseload is not a technical concept; it is an economic concept and a business concept of the coal industry that is no longer feasible.
Yes, there you go. And it's, you know, he's calling their bluff, as it were.
Well, he says again, the idea of baseload generation as an essential part of the energy mix is becoming redundant and turning into a myth dreamed up by the fossil industry to protect its interests.
There you go. Bernie, do you suppose you're right? People, do you suppose Bernie's right?
Here's another quick takeaway. It is as dangerous as the marketing term of clean coal and the idea that coal is good for humanity.
Man.
We've heard all of these things. You know?
We've heard all these things. One of the problems that we have in this country is that we've got people who are saying all kinds of things that are not entirely true. Well, I think we've come pretty much to the end of our rope. So let me put that one up. You can see it behind us here. Have a perfectly lovely week. There you go.
I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon